welcome back to part 3 of session 5, NATE121 History, Philosophy of Natural Medicine, looking at Indian or Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine systems. So we're still talking about Ayurvedic medicine and we're moving on to diagnosis now. So these are the main ways in which Ayurvedic medicine practitioners gain information about the state of health or the internal state of their patients. They gain information from these sources, so through feeling the pulse, through looking at the tongue, eyes, assessing the nails, assessing the face, looking at the lips, and perhaps visually assessing urine, or perhaps asking questions of the client to describe the state of their urination. And as we look at this, we can see that there's obviously a lot of similarity here to Chinese medicine diagnostic concepts. So pulse diagnosis, similarly to Chinese medicine, pulse is taken on the radial artery at the wrist. The overall pulse quality is noted, and some basic delineations to kind of give you a sense of what this is about. A Vata pulse would be described as being fast and slippery. And we know that this term slippery is used as a diagnostic term in Chinese medicine pulse diagnosis. There is some difference in terms of what that means within each system, so we don't want to make a mistake there. A Pitta pulse is described as being jumpy, and a Kapha pulse is slow and steady. So pulse qualities at different positions actually then give more detailed information about each dosha, and the Chinese medicine pulse framework follows similar kind of levels of complexity and intricacy in kind of internal understanding. Tongue diagnosis. So the general appearance, the colour and the coating of the tongue are all noted. Once again, this is very similar to Chinese medicine in that basic sense, but the kind of diagnostic understandings that come from those observations obviously are different between Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. So Vata tongues are dry, rough and cracked. Pitta tongues are red with an oily yellow coating, and depending on your understanding of Chinese medicine, you might start to think to yourself, well, what might this relate to from a Chinese medicine diagnostic perspective? Kapha tongues are swollen and moist with a greasy white coating. Ayurvedic healing principles. So the kind of overall philosophy is of prevention and healing when healing is required. And as such, the kind of focuses are the same: purification and rejuvenation. General principles are used to achieve this, including eating a proper diet, exercising appropriately, maintaining an appropriate lifestyle, and practicing healthy habits, and then administering a proper cleansing program when that's required. So these are the main healing practices in Ayurvedic medicine, and we're going to look at some of these over the next few slides. Diet, herbal medicines, yoga and meditation, lifestyle and behaviour changes if needed, medicated enemas, massage with medicated oils, aromatherapy, and colour or gemstone and sound therapies. So the general aim of healing in Ayurveda is to purify the body, the mind and the emotions, to restore balance to the individual. Also to correct digestive and elimination faculties in the system. And then there's a secondary focus which is all about rejuvenating the body via both general and quite specific tonifying therapies and habits, so life habits, making those changes in one's life to kind of have a tonifying or rejuvenating effect where needed. All treatment is individualised to both deal with the the constitution of the person, as well as the dosha imbalance that might be presenting at any given point in time. So diet is prescribed once again according to a person's constitution. Clean, fresh food is suggested. Proper mastication, so actually chewing the food properly is a important consideration in Ayurvedic medicine, as well as a focus on balancing the 6 tastes. And this is another similarity in some senses to the flavour diagnostic categories that exist within Chinese herbal medicine and Chinese food therapies as well. Within Ayurvedic medicine, these 6 tastes are sour, salty, pungent, bitter, sweet and astringent. And this is slightly different to the Chinese medicine thinking. So balancing those 6 tastes or adjusting the flavours within a given diet in order to account for a given dosha imbalance might be the focus of nutritional, dietary recommendations. Taste can also be adjusted according to the seasons. So foods can be influenced by seasonal changes, and in fact changes in seasons or weather conditions are seen as key points at which doshas can become imbalanced and disease or illness can start to develop. A common kind of dietary suggestion is what we understand in the West as that lacto-vegetarian diet, and this is very much aligned to Hindu yogic principles. So herbal medicine, there's a combination of mineral, animal and plant ingredients utilised within herbal medicine practices in Ayurveda. Medicine that is prescribed is chosen not only to address the disease but also to address the dosha imbalance that we've been talking about already. There's a very sophisticated and sometimes alchemical approach to formularising the prescriptions, and there's an extensive sort of record of classical texts, formularies of Ayurvedic herbal texts that have existed from very ancient times that are still used today to apply Chinese herbal medicine. Sorry, Ayurvedic herbal medicine. You can see where my brain is, right? So there's the use of medicated enemas, which I've mentioned, as well as the use of colour therapy. So colour therapy is interesting because it gives us a sense of the systematic correspondences. So colours are ascribed or seen as relating to there's 7 main colours, and they relate to the 7 chakras. They also relate to the 7 colours in the rainbow, for instance. So this kind of indicates the use of particular colours will influence particular aspects of the individual. Gemstone therapy is used, and this is looking at wearing particular gems to influence the kind of subtle workings of the body, or perhaps leaving a particular gem in water overnight and then drinking that water in the morning. These sorts of things are prescribed within Ayurvedic medicine as well. Sound therapy is also used, and we in the West we understand this kind of notion of the mantra, which is said to be a vowel sound of sort of spiritual significance. Mantras are used because they are understood to not only influence the mind, the spirit, but also the physiology. So all the 5 senses are covered in Ayurvedic treatment, and once again, the idea being to help facilitate balance, or the return of balance. Yoga and meditation. So yoga means to yoke, which means to unite, and the first level of uniting is really to do with the individual, becoming unified in themselves. But the greater meaning really of yoking to yoke is to actually unify with, the source of our being, or some divine consciousness, or God. It's an ancient Indian philosophy and a way of life aimed at achieving complete harmony between the body and the mind. And then there are special exercises or postures which are called asanas, particular breathing techniques which is referred to as pranayama, and then particular meditation techniques. And I'll talk about these. So yoga itself is really the product of thousands of years of research by rishis in ancient India. The aim of yoga is really to facilitate the practitioner to enjoy or live a healthy and happy life, as well as to focus on attaining enlightenment. It's the main type of prescribed exercise given in India for sort of medical or lifestyle health purposes, and the idea being that sort of corrective exercises should be enjoyable as well as beneficial to the system. The idea is that it facilitates the sort of smooth flow of energy in the system, and it also simultaneously helps to focus the mind. So asanas, as I mentioned, are particular postures, and the transliteration of the word asana actually means seat, and historically these asanas would be held for very long periods of time in order to sort of facilitate meditation, and they're actually seen as being postures in which the practitioner would enter meditative states. So stretching and opening the energy centers of the body is the sort of chief focus of yoga practice, and in the process this helps to engender relaxation, it helps to rejuvenate the nervous system, and enables the practitioner to really have a feeling of deep peace and relaxation. Pranayama is practice to develop or control prana, and we know from what we've looked at our previous slides, prana is this vital energy concept within Ayurvedic medicine. So pranayama is breathing to develop or control the vital energy, and we might once again make a correlation here with ideas of qigong or tai chi or something like that in Chinese systems. So the picture that we see here is actually of a man practicing nadi sadhana, and this is a practice of alternate nostril breathing, which is believed in Western thinking at least to stimulate the activities or balance the activities of both the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. In Indian philosophy or Ayurvedic philosophy, it's looking at activating, balancing the positive and negative aspects of the system, the energetic system, so the Ida and the Pingala. Okay, meditation is really about focusing the mind. It's really about developing the ability to concentrate on one thing, and once the practitioner is able to concentrate on one thing, it's then a close step to being able to perceive no thing, or have an empty mind in that Buddhist way of understanding. And so the purpose of practicing pranayama and practicing the asana, the physical practices of yoga, are really to facilitate or to develop a relaxed and focused and physically strong and supple body, and a focused mind, to facilitate the meditation practice. Okay, massage and application of oils. So in Ayurvedic medicine there's a wide variety of styles and methods of massage used. as well as other methods solely aimed at applying medicated oils. So you can imagine in such an ancient medical tradition there will have been numerous different forms of bodywork that developed disparately over thousands of years. There's a therapeutic use of mama points, which will be interesting to Chinese medicine students. These are 107 points on the body that have different therapeutic indications for massage and application of oils. So in Western concepts of massage, there's often a focus on the use of the hands as the kind of main point of, I guess, therapeutic intervention. In Ayurvedic medicine, there's a stronger focus on the application of oils, which are often medicated, and of course, a secondary interest in the way that these oils are applied, sometimes through the use of hands. Traditionally, male practitioners would treat male patients, and female practitioners would treat female patients. And once again, traditionally, massage would be delivered on a table. The patient would be completely naked. There wouldn't be any towels used in draping, and so in translating Ayurvedic massage into the West, obviously there have been some sort of changes to account for Western sensitivities around modesty, as well as to kind of engender Western needs around relaxation. So the practice in the West looks a little bit different to how it would have been traditionally practiced in India. Speaking of the mama points, some historians actually claim that they predate, or this system of understanding predates Chinese medicine concepts of the meridians and the acupuncture points. And as such, there are some claims that that this mama system actually forms the basis for the development of the meridian system in China. But there isn't enough evidence to really say that this is certainly the case. But it is interesting for us to note as Chinese medicine students. So the mama points are balanced through the application of massage techniques, through the application of medicated oils to specific points to influence the state of health of the body. Lifestyle and behaviour. The ultimate goal is of harmony of the body, the mind, the emotions, the spirit, family, community, and coherence of consciousness. So we can see, in fact, how deeply holistic Ayurvedic medicine is. Daily and seasonal routines bring life in tune with the nature, the rhythms of nature. And the practice of human values on an individual level has implications on society. Routines and habits might include prayer, worship, devotion, application of the intellect, selfless service to the community, maintaining good personal hygiene, and maintaining good moral conduct, so general restraint in behaviour. Panchakarma. So Panchakarma means 5 actions. It's an intensive cleansing and rejuvenating program. It cleanses the body's deep tissues of toxins and opens the subtle channels. It increases life-enhancing energy or vitality, as well as increasing inner peace, confidence, and well-being. So Panchakarma is really seen as the kind of physiological purification practice, which is perhaps one of the most well-known aspects of Ayurvedic medicine worldwide. Its application is systematic and very rigorous, and is not for the faint at heart. It engages in the use of purifying herbs, emesis, medicated enemas, as well as a very strict diet and strict rest, and also in the prescription of detoxifying herbs. So a full course of Panchakarma is understood to completely balance the doshas. So it's designed to mobilize toxins to stimulate them to be released from the tissue, to move into the bloodstream, and thence to the gastrointestinal tract, and then to be kind of excreted through the body that way. The body is actually prepared for the detoxification over a 3 to 5 day period in general treatment, where there's an application of oils and massage, sweating is induced, all to start that process of stimulating toxin release. Once that phase of the treatment is completed, then the 5 cleansing methods are applied. And we're talking here about emesis, so vomiting, purgatives, enemas, and then treatment focused on cleaning the blood and clearing toxins through the system. So you can understand why it's a very intense kind of process to go through. So lifestyle and diet are really strongly regulated during this process, keeping the body out of the elements, in particular the wind, making sure that the individual rests and avoids anything that might bring about some kind of retoxification, including emotional stress. So because it's such a demanding process, it needs to be carried out in an inpatient ward. So basically, people undergoing Panchakarma are admitted to Ayurvedic medicine hospitals where there are wards set up to carry out the process. The later history of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda spread to Tibet and to much of Asia, and is part of a daily life in India, Nepal, Ladakh, as well as the other countries close to the borders of India and China. The early foundation texts were destroyed by Muslim invaders in the 10th and 11th century CE, with major bodies of knowledge being lost through the sacking and burning of university libraries. It continued as a folk medicine until 1835, when it was declared by occupying British forces to be an unsanctioned system of medicine, and was also later challenged by, as a system in its own right, by growing allopathic and homeopathic influences. So Ayurveda really spread out of India originally, through the countries closest to, on India's borders really, so into the neighbouring countries first. The destruction of the university libraries, left actually only in the main Tibetan translations of Ayurvedic texts, which were luckily able to retain that knowledge and get translated again. So despite many of the challenges faced by Ayurvedic medicine, it has still survived as a cohesive whole medical system, and has effectively spread to the West alongside the movement of the yoga culture into Western countries. The other non-allopathic forms of medicine that are seen in India today include, of course, Ayurveda, but homeopathy, naturopathy, and Unani Tib, so Islamic traditional medicine practices too. The revival, or perhaps the movement of Ayurveda into the West, or Western countries, was largely influenced by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was also the founder of Transcendental Meditation, and he was responsible for establishing a university in Iowa in the United States that taught and teaches Ayurvedic medicine. And he was also able to instruct people in understanding, or instruct people in the West, so with Western minds, to really be able to understand quite foreign concepts Ayurvedic medicine concepts. So non-allopathic forms of medicine are mainstream in India, with more than 70% of the population utilising one or more system. Ayurvedic medicine is officially recognised by the Indian government as a sanctioned medical system now, in the present day. Ayurveda is found in most Western countries now, though practitioners are often practising under different regulated credentials, such as medical doctors or naturopaths or herbalists. And something to just be aware of, mercury, lead and arsenic contamination or inclusion in a number of Ayurvedic formulas means that toxicity is a concern in the consumption of those formulas. So consumers really should be aware when purchasing remedies that this might be a possibility. Okay, moving on to Tibetan medicine. So Ayurveda began to sift into Tibet around the 6th century CE, and this was really related to the growth of Buddhist philosophy and practice, as well as the dissemination of Buddhist philosophy and practice. In the early 7th century, Tibetan medicine became more formularized as an amalgamation of Ayurveda, Chinese medicine and Arabic medicine. And it also, of course, included its own local traditional healing philosophies and methods, practices, and this is really seen in the influence of pre-Buddhist shamanism, so the kind of shamanic beliefs and practices that existed in Tibet prior to Buddhism arriving there. And in this instance, we're talking about what's known as the Bon tradition. So looking at Chinese medicine and Arabic medicine in the upcoming weeks in following lectures, so please, when we do get to those lectures, just reflect on what we've covered here in these sessions this week to observe what similarities and differences you can note. Tibetan medicine actually has its closest ties to Ayurvedic medicine, despite the fact that on the surface it looks closer to Chinese medicine in terms of its techniques, but diagnostically it's actually closer to Ayurvedic medicine. An example of how the medicines were amalgamated can be seen in Ayurvedic medicine's adoption of urine analysis, for instance. This was a practice that was developed in Tibet, which was absorbed into Ayurvedic medical practice. And the other influence, another main influence that Tibetan medicine had on Ayurvedic medicine development is in relation to understandings of anatomy and gross physiology. So Tibetan culture has practices of burial rites that include dissection, and so this knowledge, became a part of Tibetan medical practice, and that knowledge then kind of disseminated into India and became absorbed into the Ayurvedic medical traditions. Okay, Tibetan medicine and Ayurveda both incorporate this concept of prana. So we can see here this basic concept shows a basic similarity. The cause of disease in Tibetan medicine is often attributed to an imbalanced mental state. The 5 elements are essentially the same. The 3 humours, or doshas, are very similar in concept, but in name are more similar to actually Greco-Arabic medicine, and these are air, bile and phlegm. And tastes of food influence the balance of the humours. So Tibetan medicine has some ideological similarities as well as differences to Ayurvedic medicine. Comparison of Tibetan medicine and Chinese medicine. So as I mentioned before, many of the therapeutics from Chinese medicine are used in Tibetan medicine, even though the underlying diagnostic framework and theory bears closer resemblance to Ayurvedic medicine. So the practices or the interventions used in Tibetan medicine include things that you'd be quite familiar with: acupuncture, moxibustion, pulse and tongue diagnosis, cupping, bloodletting, as well as a system of medicinal postures and movements, quite similar to Qigong. And we can see there that there's a nexus in each of these countries relating Qigong to yoga, to these corrective postures that are practiced in Tibetan medicine. So traditional Tibetan shamanism, as I mentioned before, this is known as the Bon tradition. It's a pre-Buddhist shamanic tradition, and it incorporates methods of divination, of healing, and other spiritual practices. So prescription of sacred mantras, special movements, internal visualization of colours were given to a patient as determined by or in meditation undertaken by the healer. This is quite a profound kind of notion to think about, which really shows the absolute requirement of the healer to be engaged in their own experiential understanding in order to be effective in healing. This is something that's often forgotten in the West when healing and healing understanding and education is so strongly focused on theoretical understanding as opposed to embodied or practiced understanding. The Buddhist sort of philosophy of karma and rebirth was quite influential in Tibetan medicine, and Tibetan medicine really has a strong focus on helping the patient discover their kind of innate disease tendencies, as well as helping them sort of become awakened to their higher self or their higher potential, their sort of true nature, and also to help them kind of break the bonds of karma that help bring them back in future incarnations. Much of this is accomplished using pre-Buddhist shamanic methods of divination, of healing, and other spiritual practices. As we see in other sort of shamanic methods or traditions, animals play a particularly significant role, and we can see the image in this slide is of a wind horse. The wind horse is actually an allegory in Tibetan shamanism, which is actually said to have a strong connection to the human soul, and actually has also been used in Tibetan Buddhism as a pivotal animal central to ideas of general health and well-being. So some revision questions as we finish up our lecture today. What is the common goal of all Ayurvedic therapies? And list 3 similarities and or differences between Ayurveda and Tibetan medicine. And some final food for thought. What is an aspect of Ayurvedic and Tibetan healing philosophies that has been lost from modern conventional medicine? I hope you enjoyed our lecture, and see you next time.